The majority of us buy four-wheel drives to hit the tracks and get out there to go exploring, but there are several tasks involved with doing this that can slow us down. Whether that be packing the vehicle or packing up camp, doing mechanical and maintenance checks, or inflating and deflating your tyres, it all takes time and it can add up. However, MORRFLATE have made this. This is the TenSix PSI Pro air compressor that is more advanced and more powerful than anything on the market for its price and size, to help cut down some of that time waiting on the side of the track, meaning that you spend less time here and more time out here. I've been waiting for this particular compressor to hit the Australian market for some time now, and I've been fortunate enough to borrow this unit off my father-in-law, who has just purchased it for his Prado 150. In this episode, I will cover the features and specifications, including why this model is improved from the previous generation, talk about how the unit works, test the unit and compare it with current market leaders, talk about some of the considerations to take into account, the value for money, who it is for, and of course my final thoughts. This particular unit is the TenSix PSI Pro Generation 2. It is the new and improved version over its predecessor. The housing is 360mm long, 150mm wide and 225mm in height, and comes with its bag to store the unit and provided accessories. The compressor inside the bag with those included accessories comes in at 9.3 kilos. The unit features two individual cylinders that work to compress the air, and in between them has a digital display. The display allows you to set a target pressure for your tyres, and this is a huge advantage over other brands on the market. Of course, there are other compressors on the market that have this capability, but not all of them have it inbuilt into a portable unit like this one does, which means that you don't have to purchase extra gear or rely on wireless connections to the phone to access. We also have a 6-foot power cable, meaning that you can sit in or around your engine bay when connected to the vehicle's onboard battery, and a 4-foot stainless steel hose for an outlet. Having a stainless steel braided hose connected to the compressor is a great idea, as often this short section close to the compressor can get quite hot when in operation, and if it's a rubber or vinyl type construction, it can get hot and split under use, and I've had that happen a few times in my previous setups. The unit is designed as a portable compressor, however it doesn't have to necessarily remain this way. There is no reason why this base can't be hard mounted somewhere in your setup, and those alligator clamps that come with the cables can easily be rewired into whatever connection you require. Having the Generation 2 unit also means there's a bunch of new features, including that stainless steel outlet hose, a purge valve, resized aluminium heat sinks, internal aluminium cylinders as opposed to mild steel previously, thermoconductive paste between the cylinders, and new piston rings. So almost all of those upgrades and improvements are designed for one purpose, and that is to keep this unit cool. Why? Because it is an absolute beast of a compressor packed into something so small and compact, and it needs the best chance to stay cool while in operation. But don't worry, we'll be testing it out a little bit later. Now this particular compressor puts out 10.6 CFM at 0 PSI, which probably doesn't mean a whole lot to a lot of people, but to put it into perspective, the ARB Twin cylinder compressor only puts out 6.16 CFM at 0 PSI. At 29 PSI, the MORRFLATE puts out 6.5 CFM and the ARB 4.68. So all in all, the specs are alleging a much faster rate of airflow with this particular unit. Further, the MORRFLATE also has a range between 0 and 150 PSI. It has a thermal cutout switch protection, an 80% duty cycle, 50 amp running draw with a 90 amp peak, and measures at 75 decibels from 1 foot away. But it's fine to talk about all the specifications. Let's see exactly how this works. Given that it's a portable unit, the compressor needs to be unpacked, set up on the ground and connected to a 12-volt battery. We can then go around and set up the hoses on our tyres and connect it to that compressor itself. We choose a desired PSI on the front-facing screen and simply press the start button. We grab a drink, have a chat, or get other parts of the vehicle ready for the drive while we wait. The compressor will stop periodically for a couple of seconds to obtain an accurate pressure reading from the tyres, and then continue until it reaches that set pressure. Once finished, we can detach our hoses, purge the system, disconnect the main hose, disconnect that power, and of course pack it away. So it's time to get into some testing, and today I'm going to be doing some side-by-side tests with the MORRFLATE and the famous ARB twin cylinder compressor that I have mounted into the Land Cruiser 200 series. Now the ARB features similar specifications, things like the thermal cutout switch. It has a range of 0 to 150 PSI. It also has about a 50 amp current draw in normal use with a 70 amp peak, and weighs in at about 8.8 kilos. The only difference here, outside of the fact that the ARB is hard mounted and the MORRFLATE is portable, is that ARB twin cylinder, in my circumstance, is hooked up to a 4-litre air tank. So I'm going to conduct 2 tests today, one with that ARB tank completely empty and one with it fully pressurized, just to see what difference it makes. So these first tests are going to be conducted with everything hooked up and ready to go. And this is going to allow us to solely measure the performance of the air compressor itself, eliminating the setup and pack up time of both the hoses and of course this portable unit. But don't worry, we'll revisit this a little bit later on. The tests are also going to be run back to back to ensure similar environmental conditions, and we're going to have the Land Cruiser running to ensure a constant battery voltage. In these tests, we're going to be inflating the tyres from 10 psi all the way up to 40 psi. Getting into the testing, and the ARB compressor without a pressurized tank starts us off. Now I'm also using the MORRFLATE quad tie inflation kit for these tests, and given the fact that the ARB unit doesn't have an auto cutoff setting, I'll need to close and reopen that valve to check the pressures as we get close to that 40 psi mark. After 7 minutes and 13 seconds, the ARB has finished and we are set to 40 psi. Time to lower the pressures back down again and restart the test. This time we'll again use that ARB compressor, however, we'll allow the 4-litre air tank to pressurize before starting. Now, even though we've allowed that tank to pressurize to 150 psi, this will assist with a fast burst of pressure at the start of the test. However, once that 4 litres has been depleted, the remainder of the test will continue as per the normal compressor's maximum output. And after 7 minutes and 52 seconds, the ARB has once again finished. Now surprisingly, we saw an increased time that took to inflate those tyres with the pressurised tank, and I'm not exactly sure why this was the case, whether or not the compressor is getting quite hot or the battery is feeling the strain after 15 minutes of continuous high amp draw. What we do know though is that with the 4-litre air tank and using a quad tyre inflation system like the one from MORRFLATE, you don't see the benefits from that storage. Now, if you're using a single hose and you're going from tyre to tyre, the compressor can continue to operate and build up pressure in that tank between tyres as you're taking off and refitting those caps. But with the quad tyre inflation kit, that advantage is lost. So moving on to the MORRFLATE tests, and the tyres are lowered back down and ready to go. We have set our compressor to 40 psi on the unit itself, and off we start. The biggest advantage here is that we don't have to keep checking the gauge manually when getting close to that target pressure. We just hit that button and wait until the compressor lets us know that we are done. And in only 4 minutes and 49 seconds, the PSI Pro has reached that 40 psi. As we run the ARB compressor back to back 2 times, I did the same thing with the PSI Pro. Running a second test to ensure the battery voltage isn't to blame here. And after only 4 minutes and 51 seconds, an almost identical time, we're back to 40 psi. This is seriously impressive. This MORRFLATE unit here was able to inflate these tyres 2 minutes and 24 seconds faster than the ARB twin cylinder compressor. And it goes to show that the rate of airflow from the MORRFLATE is significantly faster than that of the ARB. And when paired up with the MORRFLATE quad tyre inflation kit, it optimizes that performance. Now, of course, some will argue that the overall inflation time will take longer because the MORRFLATE requires more setup and, of course, the quad tyre inflation system. Now, we debunked the myth with the hoses in my last episode, and we ascertained that the quad tyre inflation system, even with the ARB Twin, is still much faster than a single hose setup. But let's do some tests, including setting up this portable compressor when compared with a hard-mounted system. With the cruiser closed up, we get the gear out needed to inflate the tyres with the ARB kit. This takes a total of 52 seconds before being ready to start the inflation process. And in reverse, packing this gear away takes 1 minute and 15 seconds. So this means that the total inflation time with inflating the tyres and the setup and pack up times included is 9 minutes and 20 seconds. Conducting the same test again with the PSI Pro compressor, we set up the quad tyre inflation kit and then feather the compressor into the engine bay, connected the power and the hoses, and this takes a total time of 1 minute and 50 seconds. Packing it away, again with a little more involved, takes 1 minute and 59 seconds. So the total inflation time with setup, pack up and inflating the tyres themselves with the MORRFLATE is 8 minutes and 38 seconds, which is still faster than the ARB twin cylinder. However, we do note we've lost some of that advantage. Now, what needs to be kept in mind here is this is a comparison in my setup. And of course, this is a portable unit and this is hard mounted. If we had a portable twin cylinder or hard mounted the MORRFLATE system, then this extra setup and pack up time would be completely irrelevant. Now, the last test I want to conduct here is, of course, the ARB twin cylinder with the single hose kit, just to see how much of an advantage the MORRFLATE has over a more traditional setup. Now this particular setup is one that I used for many years and is still regarded as a very capable and quick solution to airing back up. Now there is no doubt that the biggest negative with this method is the intervention required at each wheel, meaning that you need to stand around holding the trigger until each tyre is completed. One at a time, we filled each tyre back up to 40 psi, taking us to a total of 11 minutes and 9 seconds. So the PSI Pro was over 2.5 minutes quicker than the ARB standard singles hose setup, and if we remove that 2.5 minutes of setup time for the portable compressor as if it were hard mounted, then that would only take us 6 minutes and 6 seconds, which is over 5 minutes quicker than the ARB Twin cylinder compressor, which is very impressive. Now I say this in every episode, and this one is no exception. That is that nothing is without compromise, and the PSI Pro does have a few considerations that you must take into account if you're looking at it for your setup. And the most important one is that the MORRFLATE PSI Pro is not designed to inflate one tyre at a time. In fact, not only is it not designed for this, but it can actually cause damage over time if you do. Now it's because of the issue I spoke about in more detail in my MORRFLATE quad tyre inflation review, and that's because of these Schrader valves on the tyres that can only accept between 2 to 3 CFM of airflow, which is the bottleneck in this system. Now if we connect up a compressor that could push 10.6 CFM at a valve that can only accept 2 to 3, well, it's going to cause some back pressure and place extra stress upon the compressor. Now of course this happens with the ARB compressor too, however it's not as much of an issue with that lower output. The PSI Pro is specifically designed to be paired with the quad tyre inflation kit, and this allows the rapid inflation of all 4 tyres at once, eliminating those bottlenecking issues. And this is why the PSI Pro performs so well. But there is a disclaimer with this, and that is that not all quad tyre inflation systems are designed the same. Something like the MaxTrax Indeflate uses a Schrader valve on the housing, which bottlenecks the system before it even reaches the valves and therefore retains that issue. Now another consideration, although not a big one, is the duty cycle. The PSI Pro is rated to an 80% duty cycle, which is 45 minutes of continuous use with a 10-minute rest break. Now this is obviously going to be way more than enough if you're just inflating your tyres, particularly if we're inflating a full set of 4 tyres in less than 5 minutes. This would essentially mean that we can inflate 9 sets of 4 tyres in that 45 minutes continuous runtime, which I think is going to be enough for the vast majority of its customers. But this being said, if you're looking at purchasing pneumatic tools or air tools for these compressors, if there's any compressor on the market that's going to be able to power it, it's going to be the MORRFLATE PSI Pro with that 10.6 CFM airflow. Even something like the ARB Twin compressor in the Land Cruiser with that 4-litre tank is still not quite enough to provide that high flow continuous rate of air for pneumatic tools. And let's face it, we don't often purchase compressors like this for that purpose. But if you're someone who requires long run times or long periods of use for these compressors, more than 45 minutes, then that duty cycle may need to be considered. Of course, it all boils down to money in the end, or more specifically, value for money. We may have the greatest, most powerful compact compressor on the market, but if it's priced itself out of the market, then the value just simply isn't there. This is where another huge advantage of the MORRFLATE PSI Pro becomes apparent. This PSI Pro Generation 2 currently retails for only $499. So we're talking about a compressor that is less than 50% of the price of an ARB twin cylinder compressor in its portable form and offers 30% more performance. Now of course, if you're just starting out or looking to upgrade to the PSI Pro, then you're going to need a quad tyre inflation kit to go along with that. And there are bundles available for only $799. This means that you can get everything that you need to both inflate and deflate your tyres via the quickest method possible on the market to date for less cost than a single ARB twin cylinder compressor. Further, if you use the MORRFLATE combination, you're going to get that inflation process done 5 minutes faster as well. Look, maybe you don't need the ultra fast speeds and you don't mind spending that extra time to air up on each occasion. However, in addition to that speed is the convenience. This compressor is set and forget. You're not holding down air valves crouched by the side of each tyre, and you're not checking valves every few minutes. You simply connect your tyres, set the pressure, and that is it. Overall, I've been very impressed with the MORRFLATE PSI compressor, just as I was with the MORRFLATE quad tyre inflation system that I've reviewed previously. The quality is top notch, the functionality is refined yet still simple, and it's yet to let me down. The thing that annoys me the most is that this particular unit was purchased by my father-in-law, and after this review, I have to hand it back. I know personally that if I hadn't already invested in a twin cylinder compressor hard mounted into the cruiser, or I was just starting out and needed some basic gear to get going, then the PSI Pro and the quad tire inflation kit would be my first preference. Regardless, I hope this episode was able to give you some useful information and some insight into the real world experience and the testing of these products to determine whether or not these products will be for you, and if they are, what to expect once receiving them. Even if you aren't a fan of these products, it's always interesting to see how far the market and technology has improved over the last few years, and it's always interesting to think about just how the market will evolve over the coming decades. Regardless, whether we see you out the tracks or not, we probably won't see you up airing up because we'll be done so quickly, but we'll see you next time on Exploring Oz. Cheers.